Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Srimane Namaste Saraswati Devi Govardhana Puja Namaste Srimati Bhaktivedanta Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Advaita Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Krishna noticed that the cowherd men, they were arranging the sacrifice, and so he asked his father, what are these arrangements for? Who is this sacrifice for? What kind of a sacrifice is it? And he says that generally people, if they know the purpose of the sacrifice, then they will get a proper result. Indicating that if you don't know the purpose of the sacrifice, you won't get a good result, or the right result. So, in other words, the knowledge of what one is doing is very important when one is engaged in sacrifice or spiritual activities. So, Krishna was also asking, is this traditional or what? So Nanda Maharaj explained to Krishna that this sacrifice is for the worship of Indra, because he is the supplying the rains, and by the supply of rains, then we can engage in agriculture and grow grains and foodstuffs. And in this way we are maintained by Indra. So we have to show our appreciation to Indra. Like that. And then Krishna, he starts to talk about in a particular philosophical way, saying that actually we don't need to worship Indra, and the results of everyone's activities are due to their karma. Because of karma, everything is going on as a result of karma. So if you just do your work, if you just do your duty, then you'll get the result. And even the demigods, they have to give you the result if you perform your duty, if you do your work. That work is actually superior to everything else. Almost like saying like your work is your God. And this is karma mamangsa philosophy. That if you engage in the action, you get the result. Not acknowledging that the result is actually ultimately up to Krishna, because you can, Prabhupada gives the example in Krishna book that a doctor may try to cure a patient, so he may have some expertise and some knowledge of how to cure someone, but ultimately, without Krishna's favor, then you can't cure anyone unless Krishna sanctions it. So this is called karma amongst the philosophy, thinking that that there's no other factor involved, and that it's just dependent on your own activities or on your karma. That's karma amongst philosophy. Krishna also says that the three modes of nature are supreme, that they're controlling everything, and mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. So he's talking like this to Nanda Maharaj, and then Krishna says then we should take all this paraphernalia for the worship of Indra and instead worship Govardhana Hill and the Brahmins. And so Krishna convinces then Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men to do that. And they arrange for all kinds of ingredients to be cooked, all kinds of preparations to be cooked. And to be offered. Krishna manifests a huge form, and he accepts all the offerings. So he manifests, he says, therefore a sacrifice for the pleasure of the cows, the Brahmins and Govardhana Hill may begin, with all paraphernalia collected for worshipping Indra. Let this sacrifice be performed instead. Let many different kinds of food be cooked, from sweet rice to vegetable soups. Many kinds of fancy cakes, both baked and fried, shall be prepared, and all available milk products should be taken for this sacrifice. The Brahmins who are learned in the Vedic mantras must properly invoke the sacrificial fires. Then you should feed the priests very nicely, with very nicely prepared food, and reward them with cows and other gifts. Purport: according to Srila Sridhar Swami, Lord Sri Krishna instructed his father and other residents of Vrindavan in the technical details of this Vedic sacrifice to assure the quality of the sacrifice, and also to inspire Nanda and the others with faith in the concept of such a sacrifice. Thus the Lord mentioned that there must be orthodox Brahmins, regular sacrificial fires, and proper distribution of charity, and things were to be done in the order given by the Lord. After giving the appropriate food to each of the others, including the dog eaters, the dogs and other fallen personalities, you should give grass to the cows and then present your respectful offerings to Govardhana Hill. After everyone has eaten to a satisfaction, you should all dress and decorate yourselves handsomely, smear your bodies with sandalwood paste, and then circumambulate the cows, the Brahmins, and the sacrificial fires and Govardhana Hill. This is my idea, O Father, and you may carry it out if it appeals to you. Such a sacrifice will be very dear to the cows, the Brahmins, and Govardhana Hill. So then Sukadeva Goswami said, Lord Krishna, who is himself powerful time, desired to destroy the false pride of Lord Indra. When Nanda and the other senior men of Vrindavan heard of Sri Krishna's statements, they accepted his words as proper. The cowherd community, then they did all that Madhusudan had suggested. They arranged for the Brahmins to recite auspicious Vedic mantras, and using the paraphernalia that had been intended for Indra's sacrifice, they presented offerings to Govardhana Hill and the Brahmins with reverential respect. They also gave grass to the cows. Then placing the cows, bulls and calves in front of them, they circumambulated Govardhana. So then Krishna assumed an unprecedented huge form. One of the reasons Krishna manifested this, says here, was to instill faith in the cowherd men. Declaring, I am Govardhana mountain, he ate the abundant offerings. So, because they were just thinking that Krishna is, Nanda Maharaj is thinking Krishna is his son. They're not thinking Krishna is God. So then, they would have been afraid of Indra. They would have been fearful of disrespecting Indra. But then Krishna manifested this huge form to give them faith, so they could understand that this is the Govardhana Hill, and this form was actually worshipable. And Krishna declared, I am Govardhana mountain. So he ate the abundant offerings. Together with the people of Raj, the Lord bowed down to his form of Govardhana hill, thus in effect offering obeisances to himself. Then he said, just see how this hill has appeared in person and bestowed mercy on us. This Govardhana hill, assuming any form he wishes, will kill any resident of the forest who neglect him. Therefore let us pay our obeisances to him for the safety of ourselves and the cows. The members of the cowherd community, having thus been inspired by Lord Vasudeva to properly execute the sacrifice to Govardhana hill, the cows and the Brahmins returned with Krishna to their village, Vraj. They, according to Sridhar Swami, the Lord presented 6 theoretical points in this chapter. 1, that karma alone is sufficient to determine one's destiny. 2, that one's conditioned nature is the supreme controller. 3, that the modes of nature are the supreme controller. 4, that the Supreme Lord is simply a dependent aspect of karma. 5, that he is under the control of karma. And 6, that one's occupation is the actual worshipable deity. There was one guest here a couple of weeks ago, a doctor, and I was talking to him after the class, and he said that he believed that karma was superior to bhakti. He was also reading Bhagavad Gita. I don't know what way he was reading it, upside down or what, but that was his conclusion. Because people are very fond of their work. They think that their work is so important. Of course, we can explain to people that bhakti means devotion to Krishna. So you can work, but work with devotion. That's Bhakti Yoga. Krishna told Arjuna that he should fight. He didn't say that Arjuna should give up fighting, but he should engage in his work, in his duty, and think of Krishna while fighting. So Krishna explained to Arjuna how to engage in Bhakti Yoga, but he wasn't trying to convince Arjuna that karma was superior to Bhakti Yoga. And of course you can't understand Krishna by karma. Krishna says, Bhakti mama bhajanati yavanyasjasmi tadfadaham. He says, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing here before you. So Krishna explains by bhakti he can be understood, not by karma. He can't be understood by karma. So Krishna is interested in the devotion. Of course, we also understand that when one works and then he gives the results to Krishna, then that connection is there. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you perform, should be done as an offering unto me, Krishna says. So then when Indra, when he saw all this going on, he became very angry. Because Krishna, he deliberately spoke in that way to make Krishna angry. And he could detect in Krishna, to make Indra angry. He spoke in that way to make Indra angry. And he could detect in Indra that Indra had become proud. And so he's thinking that he's the supreme controller and that Krishna is just this little young child, and that, you know, he's not a very important person. He doesn't understand that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead in this situation, at least. And so he becomes angry, and then he calls all the Samvartika clouds. These are clouds that appear at the time of cosmic dissolution. And so he called for these clouds, and he ordered them to destroy all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. That's pretty heavy. He just wanted to kill them. He wanted them all killed. Stone dead. Finished. And then, so these clouds are very powerful clouds, and it's described that they rain like columns of rain coming down, and hailstones. And of course, this is the power of nature. Nature is very powerful. Sometimes we hear, you know, there's a wind, a hurricane or something like that, and it's I don't know what the strongest hurricane ever recorded was. 200 kilometers an hour, or 250 kilometers an hour, or 300 kilometers an hour winds that can cause tremendous destruction. But of course, nature is under Krishna's control, and really there can practically be no limit to the force of a hurricane under Krishna's control. So what if you had a hurricane? What if you had a wind that wasn't 300 kilometers an hour, but was like 1,000 kilometers an hour? What if you had a wind that was 10,000 kilometers an hour, or 100,000 kilometers an hour? That would just sort of like just blow the whole temple away. 1,000,000 kilometers an hour. That's all possible. But people actually, they think, well, according to our records, you know, one of the worst hurricanes we've seen, or the worst winds we've seen, is like so many 100 kilometers an hour. There's one morning walk where Srila Prabhupada is talking, and he's saying that, I think he mentioned Australia. He said where there was a record of a hurricane, and he said that there were buses flying through the air in this hurricane. And I remember there was one devotee there on the morning walk, and you can hear him saying, buses? Is this the way? And the fellow said, yes, buses. So there's wind, there could be a wind so powerful that everything is flying through the air. We're also flying through the air. And just blow the whole planet away. That's there, that power is there. So anyway, Indra is a representative of Krishna. But Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that all the offerings to the demigods, Mayaiva, Vihitam, Hitam, are ultimately meant for Krishna. But in this situation, Indra was seeing himself as the enjoyer and the controller. And he had become proud, and Krishna wanted to free him from that pride. It's interesting that even though Indra, he wanted to kill all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, Krishna didn't kill Indra. He didn't kill him. Imagine you want to murder all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. That's pretty heavy, to say the least. But Krishna didn't, because Indra is actually a devotee. Of course, this is also a pastime. But he wanted to free him from this pride. And so, when all this rain was coming down, then Krishna, he lifted all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they went to Krishna. They said, "Oh, Krishna, please save us from this situation." So then Krishna, he lifted Govardhana hill on the small finger of his left hand. He lifted Govardhana hill, and then he told all the inhabitants to go under Govardhana hill, and all the cows went, and all the cowherd men and all their carts and all the different paraphernalia all went under Govardhana hill. And it rained for 7 days, and Krishna was there lifting Govardhana hill, and all the inhabitants of Vrindavan were all gazing at Krishna, completely absorbed in Krishna. Because when people hear these pastimes, they think, "Oh, this is just a story, some kind of myth." But actually that's, people think that they project according to their own experience. And they think, you know, if I'm in a certain way, if I'm made in a certain way, then God must be something different. Or if I'm a person and everything in the material world is personal, then God must be impersonal. And he wouldn't do things like this. But actually, lifting Govardhana hill, of course, is nothing for Krishna, because Krishna is God. So Krishna can lift anything. He can lift the whole planet, he can lift the whole universe. And he can lift unlimited universes. So there's no surprise that Krishna is lifting Govardhana hill. Just like Prabhupada explains, like there's no surprise that Krishna married 16,108 wives. He said, even if he married 16 million wives, that's nothing for Krishna, because he can have unlimited wives, because he's God. But then people have a tendency to think that why does God have 16,000 wives? Or if Krishna is lifting Govardhana hill with his little finger, that's some kind of mythology or something like that. But why should it be mythology? If God can do anything, God can marry any number of wives, God can lift anything, what's so extraordinary about Krishna lifting Govardhana hill? There's nothing extraordinary about it. If you accept that God can do anything, why can you not accept that, you know, he's appearing as a little 7-year-old boy and lifting Govardhana hill? But people don't even think of it practically. They just sort of brush it aside, just like that. They just say, "Oh, it couldn't be like that. It couldn't be like that. It's not possible." It's just like, why don't you think about it? You know, why don't you check it out? Think deeply. People don't think deeply. That's the problem. So if people think deeply, they'll ask questions. You know, is God a person? Is he impersonal? If he's all powerful, then he can do anything. And then I shouldn't put Krishna in a box and think that, you know, he couldn't be doing this and he couldn't be doing that. So it's also explained that when they were under Govardhana hill, you know, Krishna's lifting Govardhana hill, and Mother Yashoda's becoming, after some time, concerned about Krishna, that he's hungry, and she's thinking, "Oh, your stomach has caved in," and she is offering him some preparations, and and Krishna's saying, "Oh, I'm not hungry," but Madhu Mangal is saying, "Oh, actually, I'm hungry. You know, it's time. I'm feeling very hungry. My stomach is, you know, feeling really like needing something to eat." And then there's other things happening, like that Radharani is there, and one gopi says to Radharani, "Oh, Radharani, don't move your eyebrows, because if you move your eyebrows, Krishna will see you and he'll become ecstatic and start shaking, and the hill will fall." And things like this are going on. There's all kinds of interactions going on. And so they're completely oblivious of what's going on outside. They're just completely in ecstasy, absorbed in this pastime with Krishna. And it's explained elsewhere also that on top of Govardhana hill, all the trees and different living entities on the top of Govardhana hill, they were totally unaffected by Indra's the rain and the wind. They were completely unaffected. He couldn't even move one blade of grass on Govardhana hill at this point, or affect one leaf of a tree on Govardhana hill. So then after 7 days, Indra could see that he had no power in this situation to create any problem for Krishna or the inhabitants of Vrindavan. And he told the clouds to desist. And then Krishna told the inhabitants to, that they could come out now from under the hill. And so Krishna's devotees are always take shelter of Krishna for complete protection. Of course, Krishna is the well-wisher of Suridam Sarvabhutanam. He's the well-wisher and friend of everyone. Bhaktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatvam Shantam Rishyati. Bhaktaram Yagya Tapasam. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices and austerities. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, the supreme lord of all the planets and demigods. Suridam Sarvabhutanam, the supreme friend and well-wisher of all living entities. Gyatva Mam Shantam Rishnati. Gyatva, one who possesses this knowledge, he attains peace from the pangs of material misery. So, even though people don't know it, Krishna is the friend and well-wisher of all living entities. But of course, when they don't know it, they're not peaceful. Because they don't know it, they're not peaceful. But if they did know it, they would be peaceful. Because Krishna says, if you possess this knowledge, you will be peaceful. And you will be free from the pangs of all miseries. And also, so the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they took shelter of Krishna in so many different situations when demons appeared. And Krishna always gave them shelter. But Krishna will give anyone shelter who acknowledges his position, who acknowledges Krishna's position, who knows what Krishna's position is. He becomes peaceful just because he acknowledges Krishna, because he appreciates Krishna. He becomes peaceful. Also, by hearing these pastimes, Nivritta Tarshar Upagayamana Bhavoshatat Shotra Manobiramat Ka Utamashloka Gunanuvadat Puman Virajeta Vina Pasugnat. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the Parampara system. Such glorification glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Oh yeah, so such glorification is relished by those who are no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease from hearing such narrations except one who is a butcher, or one who is killing his own self? So, descriptions of the Lord, they're the right medicine. They're actually a medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. It's medicine for the soul. And one becomes free from all sinful reactions. Tava katam vitam tapta jivanam. Is it Kavibir idadam kalmasapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grinanti Me Bhuvi Grinanti Ye I'll come back to the end. So that verse describes how the nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the how they free one from sinful reactions. And then these narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly those who spread the message of Godhead are most munificent. The nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities. When we hear about Krishna and we hear about Krishna's activities, one becomes free from sinful reaction. So this is a very powerful, and it actually frees one from repeated birth and death. So one can actually become completely free from entanglement in the material world just by hearing about Krishna's pastimes. Krishna actually, he deliberately engages in these pastimes for the benefit of the conditioned soul. O Master, although you have no connection with material existence, you come to this material world and imitate material life just to expand the varieties of ecstatic enjoyment for your surrendered devotees. Krishna actually comes and performs pastimes to increase the ecstasy of his devotees. And so the amazing thing is that people, they don't want to hear about Krishna. Or they think it's some kind of mythology. And so people have a concept of God that's impersonal. And then they don't think that Krishna can engage in that this could be God engaging in these kind of activities. But actually Krishna is what are you going to think about if you don't have a personal conception of God? If God is not, it's not a question of having a personal conception. Krishna is a person. He is a person. We're all persons. So if Krishna is a person and if we're persons, why shouldn't Krishna be a person? Because actually the impersonal comes from the person. ultimately the person is the source of the impersonal. Krishna says, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. So then Krishna has activities and pastimes which we can think about, which we can hear. We can hear about Krishna, we can think about Krishna. And if you're just on an impersonal level, it's very difficult. What are you going to think about? What are you actually going to think about? We need to think about something. So that's the nature of the mind. You know, we want to think about something. You can't think about nothing, huh? You can't say I'm not going to think about anything, because that's a thought in itself, isn't it? I don't want to think about anything. I'm just going to sort of blank out and there's nothing there. So there's always some sort of thinking going on, or there's some desire there coming from the soul. So then we can think about these pastimes and talk about these pastimes. And then when a devotee becomes very, very advanced, he becomes so absorbed in these pastimes of Krishna and the activities of Krishna that he can't think of anything else. And we know about Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Pariksit. He was listening to Sukadeva Goswami reciting Bhagavatam for 7 days and 7 nights, and he didn't eat, he didn't drink, and he didn't sleep for 7 days. And he didn't even feel any disturbance. He was just completely absorbed with that. So, does anyone have any comments or questions? Yeah, one thing about Indra as well is that Krishna wanted to crush Indra's pride and show that Indra wasn't actually the supreme controller. And that is the tendency. There's one in another chapter in the 10th canto, and this is after Govardhana Hill, when Krishna he regained from Bhaumasura. Bhaumasura had stolen the earrings of a deity, and the peak of Mandara Hill, which is where the demigods had their sort of pastimes, like a playground for the demigods, and the umbrella of Varuna. So when he defeated Bhaumasura, Krishna brought all these back to the heavenly planets, to Indra, and he gave Aditi back her earrings, and so he gave these things back. So he went there with Satyabhama on the back of Garuda. But Satyabhama, she said, before we go back, she said, I want a parijata tree. So Krishna took a parijata tree from the heavenly planets. And then as soon as Indra saw that, he said, as Prabhupada says, no sir, you can't have that. So Indra wanted to stop Krishna, and he was actually prepared to fight with Krishna to stop him bringing the parijata tree from the heavenly planets. And so Indra was defeated, obviously, by Krishna. But the thing is that this is after Govardhana Hill, and Indra had actually prayed to Krishna to free him from this pride, so that he wouldn't do this kind of thing again. So it seems to come up from time to time. And Sukadeva Goswami says, when he mentions this in the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Pariksit, Sukadeva Goswami says, to hell with the demigods and their opulence. You know, how the opulence of the demigods is so bewildering to them that they become, the spirit of enjoyment is very strong. And so, but then at the same time, Krishna, Indra is, he's talking to Krishna. I mean, what kind of a personality is that? He's actually talking to Krishna, he's talking to God. And so he's obviously a very special personality. These pastimes are like a soothing balm. I remember reading one devotee, he was going out in book distribution way back in the early days. It's in Vaisheshika's book about book distribution, and one of those devotees, he went to Canada to show devotees how to distribute books. And he was distributing Krishna books. And then they went out travelling in a van. This is way back, like in 1970 or something. And Mahatma was there on that party. Mahatma was there. Mahatma was actually huge back in the 70s. Huge, big book distributor. And so anyway, this devotee, he came from Los Angeles, as far as I remember, to show the devotees how to distribute books. And he's, they came into one housing estate or something like that, and the devotee had been reading Krishna book. And he said, reading Krishna book, we read Krishna book every evening, you know, and had hot milk and read Krishna book. And he said it was like liquid nectar for my soul, how he described it. And then he went out distributing, and he was, I can't remember this devotee's name, he was a really enthusiastic devotee. And it might have been Haridas. No, it wasn't Haridas. But he ended up on an apartment with this couple, telling them about Krishna book. And he said he was really enthusiastic talking about the book. You know, to such an extent that this was just a young couple, he said he had them sitting on the edge of their seats. You know, like this. And they said, well, how much is it? You know? And he says, yeah, it's for, you know, quite a decent price. He said, well, it's $10. I said, okay, we'll take it. And $10 was a lot of money in 1970. They gave $10 for the book. But, you know, the whole, there definitely was a mood among devotees, you know, in relation to Krishna book, and it's obviously still there too, but, you know, just that mood was there about hearing about Krishna's pastimes, that it was very nectarine experience, that it actually touched the soul, it really touched the heart. It wasn't like reading fairy stories or something like that, because the thing is about devotees is that they're getting these pastimes through the pure devotee. The pure devotee is actually able to give us the right attitude and frame of mind and the proper knowledge by which we can properly understand the transcendental nature of these pastimes. Janma karma chanai devyam evam yovatita fataha chakfa deham pranajana naidimam eti sarjana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving the body take his birth in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. So by the grace of the pure devotee who knows Krishna personally and who has full faith in Krishna's activities and pastimes, knowing that these pastimes and activities are not ordinary activities, they're not mythology, they're not fairy tales, these are the activities, transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada had such an intense desire that everybody would hear about Krishna. He had an intense desire for everyone to hear about Krishna. It's actually explained in the Bhagavatam in the 12th canto that if you open the Bhagavatam and you read one verse, then you become free from all sinful reactions and your life is successful. Then it says, even if you read half a verse, you're free from all reactions, and it's in the 12th canto, and your life is successful. Then it says, even if you read one line, or even if you read one word, and Prabhupada also explained this to devotees, that if you distribute a book, if somebody opens a book, if he just looks at the book and reads one word, then his life is successful. So this is the powerful message of Godhead and of the pure devotee. The transcendental potency of coming in touch with Krishna. And you can come in touch with Krishna by hearing about Krishna, by hearing about his pastimes, and by understanding that everything to do with Krishna is completely transcendental. That's why a devotee, even when he hears about Krishna, because, ordinary people they hear about, what's this about God killing demons and all these kind of things? But for a devotee, these are all transcendental experiences. And of course we also understand that when a demon is killed by Krishna, he's benefited. Anyone who's killed by Krishna is benefited. He's actually very fortunate to be killed by God personally. I remember one time, I'll just finish up now, one time in Dublin, we had a discussion, I remember Sasarup Maharaj was there, and he mentioned something about God killing. Can't remember exactly the example that he gave. It was something out of Chaitanya Charitamrita, but anyway, one guest spoke up and he said, how can God kill someone? That's not right. You're saying God is killing someone. So I remember Sasarup Maharaj, he just threw it out to the floor, and he said, okay, what does anybody have to say about this? So I remember I just put my hand up and I said, well, actually, God is killing everybody. What's the big deal? What's your problem? Then who is ultimately going to be the cause of your death? It's God. So why should you think that God is already killing the ultimate cause of everyone's death, including yours? You're ultimately going to be, he's ultimately going to be the cause of your death. So the thing is that if somebody is directly killed by Krishna, then he's very fortunate. So the conditioned soul, he thinks that God has to be this way and God has to be that way, according to my idea of how God should be. And the pure devotee, that's the power of the pure devotee, he blows all these misconceptions right away. Completely blows all this away. And we come to Krishna consciousness with all kinds of misconceptions about how God should be and this and that. And the pure devotee just completely blows the whole thing away. And then you can actually see things properly. Okay, so can we go down?
Yeah.